Hi, you may have one of the many derivatives of the FTDX 5000. There's a good chance you've got the SM-5000 station monitor on top like I have here, and I think the majority of us have probably set it up and left it in the factory settings, or perhaps we explored some of the options in the early days and haven't gone back since. So your settings might be just like mine here. If I just zoom in, centre frequency, showing a scan either side of where we are, with peaks there. There's somebody on 14250 giving a good signal, and that's one option, but there are many other options, and in this video we'll just explore how we can change and improve possibly the settings on the SM-5000. Hope you find it useful. So what I'll do is, as we go through the different settings, I'll index them in the description of this video, so if you want to go back and just look at a particular point, you can look in the description and find where to focus in on. So to start with, there's the CS button down here. If we press and hold that, that brings us into the station monitor settings over here. Unlike the menu setting on the Yaesu, these changes are actually live, so as we change them, the monitor will change, and that's how it will be set. As you know, on the Yaesu, you press and hold the menu button to store the changes. That's not the case here. So if we press and hold the CS button for 2 seconds, this side of the display is now changed. So I'll zoom in and reposition the camera to show these menu settings and the station monitor, and we can go through the options that are available. So as with the normal menu system on the Yaesu, this knob takes us through the menu options, and this knob takes us through the detailed settings for each option in turn. So depending on where you've been left, you might have display, mode, center span, attenuation, trace, or LBWS. So display on and off does what it says in the tin. So I don't think we need that one. So mode, this is the mode we're in at the moment, where the frequency you're on is the center frequency, and the display, as you'll probably have in yours, is 0, +50, +100, and minus figures as well. And you'll be used to how that works, and I won't explain that because I'm sure that's the standard setting. So if we go over here and turn this to fix, now the display, you can see here on the 20 meter band, is showing 14.0 at the bottom, all the way to 14,500 at the top. Now if I change bands, you can see there on top band on 160 meters the frequencies have changed, and if I go on to 80 meters, frequencies have changed again, and now you'll see a bright center indicator, and as we move around frequencies, that's moving around. So unlike before, where the whole display shifted with your frequency and you always saw that same window wherever you were, so for example there, we might be moving down the band and we'd see that little picture of the band there as we moved. Here you see all the band in one go, and where you are in the band. So you can see far beyond where possibly you were set before in terms of scanning a frequency. That's out of band, but there's a big signal there, and you can jump around as you want. And a useful feature is in another menu setting on the Yaesu, you can change the band start settings. So you'll notice here we've got beyond the 80 meter band here up to 3.9, but if I go to 30 meters, it's a much narrower bandwidth from 10 to about 10,150. So you can change the degree of detail, the amount of band you can see, depending on which band you're on. So I've gone to 10 meters, then I've got it set to the bottom part of 10 meters, the SSB and CW section. So if you are a particular CW addict or an SSB addict, or you like a bit of both, you can change the band display to show the part of the band that you're in. So they're 40 meters in the UK, 7 to 7.2. I've got the whole band there. If I was just interested in CW, I can change some settings which I'll show you later to just get this bottom part of the band, so you've got a more detailed display. So that's what fix does. So beyond fix are these limited bandwidth sweeps, which is LBWS. And you can see here it's narrowed the amount of band that we can see. I'm still in that fixed mode, so I can move around, but we're seeing just a smaller part of the band. And in terms of the refresh rate, that's increased. So the processor inside the station monitor has less band to look at, so it's you can see this is moving around much more quickly now. And likewise, if I go to setting 2, it's narrower, and if I go to, I think it goes to setting 3, it's even narrower still. You can see how fast that's moving compared to if I go all the way back to fixed. That's the sort of speed you'll be used to in your full display. But go back to these narrow modes, faster, faster, faster. So if you're interested in a very small part of the band and you want a rapid response, then that's the mode for you. So here we are back on centre again. If you remember, we looked at fix and the different narrow band modes. So back on centre with 100 and a bit K either side of the display. So if we turn the knob onto centre span, this is where we adjust the width of that display. So it's fairly straightforward. 100. So now you can see that big signal there is just 40k up. If I go down to 50, that's gone out of the band now, and we're zooming in, and the display is showing much more detail now. What was once probably one spike, if I go back to 250, becomes now more a detailed picture of that spectrum. So 250, which is the normal width setting, 500, 1000, 2500, and back to 25k. So you can change the detail and the bandwidth you can see on there. And I'll put it back to 250. So that's the centre span feature. So here we are back where we started, centre span with 250 width, normal sort of display up here. The next option is attenuation. Now this does to the display what the attenuation control does to the rig. So you can attenuate the 10 dB, you can see it's dropping the sensitivity 20 dB. So you've got 3 settings, well 0, 10, 20. And these are in addition to what you would use on the rig attenuator on this side. I'm not sure what you'd use that for, because here I've got no attenuation on, but I'm on IPO1. So you can see if I drop on the rig to 12 dB attenuation, I can go even further with this. There's another 10 and there's another 20. So you can reduce the sensitivity of the display, but I'm not too sure what you'd use that for. So that's the attenuation feature. So we're still in normal setting, centre mode, with the 100 display either side, 125. So now if we go around to past attenuation to trace. So we're in normal trace mode, which you can see, but there are 2 other options. There's average, and now you can see the display maintaining an average of what's gone on. And just to show you how this works, if I take it off IPO1 and put it on AMP2, so blast the signals coming in, so it's taken the average up, that darker blue, darker grey. But if I bring it back down to AMP1, there you can see the average dropping as well. AMP2, AMP1. So that might be useful if a station suddenly pops up out of the blue. Are you trying to monitor the band for signals? It would stand out because the average wouldn't have accounted for it before, so it'll suddenly be a white peak. That's something to consider. And if we move on to Peakhold, now the display will continually hold the peaks. So this is another useful feature. So if you can see there's a signal there, it keeps going in and out of the peak display. But if I again, to overemphasize this, put it on AMP2, so everything's gone a bit wild. But if I bring it back down to IPO1, you can see it's held the peaks. So that's Useful to, again, if you're on a part of the band and paying attention down here, or in mid QSO, you're doing some logging, something in the shack, you'll see a residual peak where somebody's maybe come up, had a transmission, then dropped again. So when you look at the display, you might think, well, there's nobody there, but the peak would stay holding that transmission. So it'd catch your eye, I think. I think that's quite useful. And you think, well, how do you get rid of this? Quickly, just change your band, come back, and it's wiped it. And then it's building up a new Peakhold there. So you can see again, if I go into amp 2 and then drop it down to amp 1, it's kept those peaks. But if I just refresh it by going off another band and leave it, you can see it's slowly accumulating the averages. So that's Peakhold, average, and back to normal where we started. So here we are again, back to the start, centre span. Now if you go through trace, LBWS, and then this knob doesn't do anything, the limited band width sweep will only start functioning if we go back to the mode, instead of centre, which is a standard one, fix, go back into the LBWS 1, remember that width, 2, it's even narrower, but very fast in refresh, 3, super fast. That last option moves that segment around. So if, for example, we go back to limited bandwidth sweep setting 1, so we've got a piece of the band there, move the mode around to LBWS. Now we've got some options. So we've got medium or middle, high, so it's moved it to the right, and you can guess the next one, low, move it to the left. So if we go back to mode and LBWS1, make that smaller, make it the smallest. So that's super fast LBWS3, and it's whizzing away like a good one on a fast refresh. Now if we go back to LBWS, we've got lots of options. There's medium or middle, sorry. High 1 moves it a little bit. High 2, high 3, and so on. So you can move the section that you're monitoring around. Again, I'm not sure why you would look at detail beyond where you're interested in, which to me is there. But anyway, interesting. So if we go back to mode, bring that there's fixed, bring it back to centre, and then we're back where we started. So what I've changed my setting to, instead of the standard display with 150, 125 either side, and as you know, as we move, we slowly move into those signals there, and we move right, and we're always scanning this one bit of band that we're in either side of where we are. What I now use is fix. So instead of centre mode, we've got fix. We've got the frequencies along the bottom, and I think the way my rig was set up, I don't remember if I've changed it, in the other menu settings, which I'll show in a minute, the band starting position is correct for the UK where I am. So for example, 7 megahertz for 40 meters band, and so on. Is if I flick through the bands, 3.5 for 80 meters, and the degree of spectrum that you want to see shows how much band you're going to see. So for example, here you can see in 80 meters I'm losing a bit of the scope, because in the UK 80 meters stops at 3.8, so that part of the band isn't really much use to me. But the next setting loses a piece of band, and you'll see in the next part of the video you get a little chevron sign here to show you that you're off part of the band. But the fixed, and then what I also now use, instead of average, I'm going for peak. So I'm going for a fixed frequency, so I'm showing the band that I'm on, hopefully in full width or near enough. I can move around within the band. You can see the marker. I'm going to go to that frequency there, who's loud, who was a second ago. But again, while we were looking down there, these Peakholds up here might have shown that another station was transmitting and draw our attention further up. So we could move back to there. So although some people question the value of the station monitor and say it's only valuable for the speakers, I find it's really useful now for using the display in this mode, and I have a PAN adapter as well. So that's quite a handy visual display. So it might as well be more useful to you if it's sat in front of you all day long while you're in the shack than something you don't pay any attention to. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll now just show you the menu option just to check where your bands start and how that part works. So to check the start point of your frequencies on your display for your bands, if you go into the menu by pressing the menu button, on mine it's 132 and in the manual it says 131 menu option, but my menu option 131 isn't. So here you can see 1.8 megahertz top band and the start position. So if I go through the bands here, 80 meters starts at 3.5 and so on, all the way through to 6 meters, which in the UK starts at 50 megahertz. So that just allows you, through these menu options, which starts on mine 132 all the way up to 142, just the start positions of the band, and that dictates where the display starts for that band that you're on. So in this final part of this video, I've just showed you the menu option to just confirm you've got the right starting position if you're into the display mode of fixed, which is what I have, and has the frequencies along the bottom. So as you know, display mode, I'm into fixed span. So this is what dictates the width of the band that you can see. And here I'm on 80 meters, it's on 500 kilohertz, so it goes from 3.5 all the way up to 4 megahertz. Now in the UK, 80 meters stops at 3.8, but you'll see if I drop this down to the next option, which is 250, I've got those little chevrons there just to indicate that 3.8 is out of display, and you'll see my frequency, if I go back up, my frequency indicator, which is way off band there, if I just move that around, you can see here, so if I put it right on the top of 80 meters, change the display here to make that more detailed, you can see I'm off the end by those chevrons. So as I scroll down and start coming into 3.7s, you'll see the frequency display appear. So there we go, I'm coming down the band now. So if you're an avid CW, you're just interested in down this end of the band, why have 250? Why not, sorry, go the other way, 100. So now we've got 3.5 to 3.58, or even smaller, 50 kilohertz. So 3.5 to 3.54. So you get a much more detailed display. So that's some good options, and these are remembered per band. So if I go on to 40 meters, which is only 7 to 7.2 in the UK, you can see there the 250k option brings it in nicely. So there's the top of 40 meters in the UK, and there's all the broadcast stations above that you can see. So as I move around the bands, this changes. If I go into 10 meters, I've got that to 500. 12 meters, it's got to 100 because it's a very narrow band. So you can see how it all works. So simple to remember: display on off, who needs that? Mode, we've talked about centering, which is the one it came with. Fixed, or the very narrow views. Center span, just making that more detailed or less detailed. Attenuation, not sure what you use it for. And the trace, average, normal, which is what it comes with, or Peakhold, which I'm finding useful. And LBWS is only coming into play when you're using that narrow view. So if I go back to 80 meters, put that back into fixed. So I've got 80 meters, I've got Peakhold, I can see it there. If I put it onto IPO2 and then drop it down again, there's my Peakhold, but I can clear that by just changing band and coming back. And if I come out of CS just by pressing it, I don't have to hold it like the memories to hold the memories. You can see it's remembered that. There's my Peakhold again, just to show it up properly so you can see how it works. So that's an introduction to the SM-5000, the display, and in the next video we'll look at the speakers and what we can do with those. Hope you found this useful.